Now, so this isn't just an NBA issue. I feel like this is a pro sports issue. So let's go macro, go bigger picture. Is there a double standard between teams and their star players?
No, there's not a double standard. And it's not just an NBA issue. You're right. It's not just a sports issue. You're right. It's a life issue. And let's talk a little life up here. Unless the game has done a drastic 180 turn since I played and since you played, I don't think it needs to be umbrellaed and termed as mistreating its athletes. Since we all know it hasn't gotten worse, it's gotten better. We know some current athletes and how they're compensated, how they're properly treated. I must disagree with the sentiment coming out from Draymond Green. What's happening is Draymond is confusing what a lot of people are confusing. Double standard with different worlds. I'm going to say it again. Double standard with different worlds. Double standard implies that you're in the same world with two different realities. And I understand why people get confused there. They think that. But the truth is, we're actually in just two different realities. Ask Michael Jordan, who's an owner. We are employees, brother. I know we are glorified employees. 80,000 people showed up to watch me just work. And not 80,000 people show up for everybody's job employment. But what happens from that perspective is you start to get a God complex. You start to lose your way. You start to realize that, hey, maybe I'm not just the same as other employees. Draymond Green and others need some real world friends to understand perspective. Because when you are an employee, there are two names on your check, yours and whoever's paying you. You guys don't live in the same reality. It's just that simple. So if you don't like bosses, be a boss. Simple as that. Oh, you can't be a boss. Well, then being a boss comes with its perks, comes with its privileges. I made up a Wileyism one day, just sitting there in the lab, just thinking. I was like, you know what? You only despise authority when you think you can never be authority. People look up and only get mad at up when they never think they're going to be up. And I'm looking at this situation with athletes. And I'm just going to start off with just some objective analysis. Gave you my thoughts on it. Here's some objective analysis just to show you what respect looks like. Because respect can be perception-based. Most of the time, it actually is. You're processing what you think you feel and what you think they're doing, so therefore, it's based on how I feel. But I also look at a job as showing respect in other ways, other facets, like compensation. In the NFL, in the last decade, since 2011, the average annual salary has went from $18 million to $45 million. Highest average salary in the NFL, 18 to 45. Woo-hoo. NBA has went from 27 to 42. Baseball is 27 to 36. It's outpacing inflation by a mile, lapping inflation. So when you talk to me about respect, I'm like, okay, what are your measurements? What are your metrics? Because this metric right here is undeniable. They are showing you respect. You're just not showing the same gratitude.
I like that take. The issue I have is this.
Fire.
There is a double standard in reaction from the fans.
Oh.
And I really think that's where Draymond feels it most.
Okay.
There's a double standard in reaction. There's a double standard in standard. What do I mean? Harrison Barnes, Marcellus, you remember when Harrison Barnes was playing for the Dallas Mavericks, middle of the game, he gets traded. They pull him during the middle of the game. Y'all remember this. And the broadcast has a screenshot of Harrison Barnes. You see there, reports that he just got traded for Justin Jackson and Zach Randolph. Now, conversely, remember when Andrew Luck's retirement got announced middle of a preseason game? Andrew Luck gets booed walking off the field. Andrew Luck, like the great Andrew Luck and all he did for the Colts, resurging them after Peyton Manning. He gets booed walking off the field. He didn't ask for a trade. He didn't ask to leave. He said, you know what? I can't do this anymore physically. And he gets booed, but Harrison Barnes, who gets pulled in the middle of the game, gets turned into a meme. That, Marcellus, I think, is where the double standard lies. The double standard lies when a player signs a contract, and the NFL will go, a player signs a contract. That contract is binding for the player.
Yeah.
Not binding for the team.
You're right.
And so how is there not a double standard when there quite literally are contracts that aren't in fact contracts, because a contract is not dually binding. The contract is only binding from one side. So I, the player, want my freedom. Yo, let me go. I've outpaced myself for this contract, but I can't get my freedom. But the team looks at the player and, you've underperformed on the contract, so we can cut you. That in and of itself screams unfair, and it screams and urges double standard.
I can't attack that. I can't negate what you just said there. It's almost built into the infrastructure of employee versus employer that there are going to be benefits that you just can't go past. You just can't surpass.
In sports, wouldn't you say specifically? Because I don't think in life, like on ours, I ain't seen your contract, but I don't think like you can't just up and one day Fox be like, you know what, Marcellus? You didn't have a good show today. You're done with no repercussions.
Okay, well, let me say this. If you know the real world, people, non-competes happen every single day. They sit down employees every single day, usually at the executive level. They just say, paid leave of absence. They say, non-compete. You can go somewhere else, but you got 90 days to wait and do that. Oh, you're taken care of, but guess what? You're not going anywhere else. That's a little infringement on your rights and liberty at that time, but we don't make a big stink of it because 80,000 people don't go to someone's job and watch that transaction. Transfers, leaves of absences. One of my best friends, Matt Linson, has lived in 5 different states, like 8 different cities as an executive. Every midnight hour, hey, man, you know what? The plant is closing. Hey, man, we need you over here. And that just happens like nothing in the real world. But we're athletes. We got a God complex. We think we're bigger than we are. You know why? My wife broke this down to me. I'm going to tell you why we think we're bigger than we are. And I fought her tooth and nail. But, you know, once you get into a relationship for real, stop being super single, you're going to come to this realization. You will internally nod at stuff that you externally are disagreeing with. I was trying to win the argument, but she was breaking it down. Athletes typically go from zero or little to everything.
Yes, sir.
In our 20s, we skip a step. We skip the middle step that most of the real world has to go through that allows them to understand value, allows them to understand properly appreciation because they have to work their way up the mountain. Whereas we're at the bottom of the mountain, next thing you know, a helicopter comes and puts us at the apex and says, you arrived. We didn't have to do the same kind of grind in the same manner. What's lost in that is all of a sudden, hey, man, have you ever noticed this? In our locker room, I'm 25 years old. I'm a star athlete. Anybody in the NFL is treated better than most workers in their normal jobs. But let you be the man. You grab a towel, wipe your brow, you know, hit your pits, throw it on the ground, and some guy that's older than you who's employed by that franchise will run, grab that towel, and throw it in the laundry basket with pride. And with that pride, all he wants is 2 things. 1, hey, I like being around all you guys. This is an opportunity. But 2, the opportunity to get that foot in the door so I could climb within this organization. We don't even look at life like that. We don't even have that perspective because we took the helicopter past that point in life. Let me tell you what happens in our world. Imagine this, Acho, because this is a quote from Draymond Green. He wants athletes to be treated with the same respect and the same rights a team has. Treated with the same respect and the same rights a team has? Oh, you and I are not treated the same, and we on the same damn show. I'm not going to say who's getting treated better. I think you get treated better than me, but they love you. Every day after the show, producers, Acho, and they don't say nothing to me. But the point of this is, imagine this, Acho, that the FCC that governs networks will sit there and say, oh, we need to treat Acho the same as we treat Fox, the corporation. You know damn well that ain't happening. So what is Draymond talking about? You know what Draymond is doing right now? He's pandering. Ain't it smart? He's pandering.
Come on, sir. That's a volatile word. You can't just throw pandering out there.
Volatile word, Fred Hampton. Let me tell you. Look, I know he's going to have support because he's speaking to power. Anytime you speak to power, people are like, yes. But that's not the proper medicine. He's putting peroxide on something that needs surgery. And he's trying to act like, yo, it's fixed. You still need to look at it deeper than that. I'm going to tell you simple, and I'm going to let you get some of this. Some of these ribs. What Draymond doesn't understand, and everyone needs to understand is, sometimes you can lose that perspective, and then you live in this alt universe, and you think that that is reality. Why do you think so many of us athletes struggle in transition? Because we're going to a different world once we retire. And that's just, rest in peace, Vincent Jackson and everybody else who's been through some of these rigors. That is underlining a lot of the issues with us. We are now out of orbit. We're out of space. And then when we have to hit reality, we don't know what that really feels like.
You speak in truth. You speak in bars. I'm not going to disagree with anything you said.
Okay.
I'm just going to pivot to the other part of what Draymond said.
What'd he say?
Because what else Draymond said is he said castrated James Harden in regards to
Follow's a word.
Exactly.
Follow's a word.
I'm a pivot. He criticized James Harden for requesting a trade. We criticized James Harden for mailing it in. But Marcellus, think about this. NBA players get pulled out of a game so they don't get hurt, so that they can be traded because the team is no longer utilizing their abilities. They just want to trade those abilities. James Harden did the same thing. He mailed it in. Remember, James Harden, he mailed it in the final 3 games because he was trying to protect himself. The same thing teams do. They pull a player to protect that asset because they want to ship that asset off.
Yeah.
The player, he pulls his own abilities to protect his own assets because he wants to be moved. Yet we treat and respond to it differently. That is where I think Draymond Green hit the nail on the head. We don't respond to those two things the same. We look at ownership when a player gets traded and just say, oh, okay, he's getting traded. But then when a player is like, you know what? I want to get traded. How dare you? You're under contract. Fulfill that contract. You were obligated to that contract. You're getting paid millions of dollars to play this game. But keep in mind, players and what they make pale in comparison to ownership.
Yeah.
Like Phil said, comes with different responsibilities, comes with different levels of privilege. But nonetheless, we respond to it differently. Draymond did not miss, and nor do I think he pandered, at least not with that aspect, because that's 100% facts.
Power has its privileges, and people don't want to respect power, so they're not going to respect the difference in the privileges. It's just that simple, man. Owning anything in this world, you have more power than the person that works for you. Whether you have a nanny or not, I mean, whether you have an entertainment company or not, Acho, your production of uncomfortable conversations, you get to make the ultimate decisions. And I don't like a world where Twitter reaction becomes your premise of how the world is accepting
Can we talk
things.
Respect then? Because
let's talk respect.
You can have more privilege than another person, but the respect should be equal across the board. And that's the word Draymond used. Because Draymond said, I want as a player to be treated with the same respect as ownership. Not necessarily the same privileges, but I want to be treated with the same respect. I'll give it to you like this, though, because we want to talk privileges. I walked into Lincoln Financial Field where the Eagles play. It might have been my last season there, my 3rd or 4th year in the league. I walk into the stadium, and I'm like, yo, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, he owns all of this. I was like, yo, that's mind-blowing.
Big.
Like, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that, and I'm like, yo, he owns all of this. But then I said, wait a second. He has to pay for all this. Right? And like,
come with a responsibility.
I flipped it on his head, and I was like, yo, he has the privilege of owning all of this.
Yes.
But he also got to cut all these checks. That's the privilege. However, when we're talking respect, everybody, I think, should get that same amount of respect, which the players are not getting.
Man, respect. What a choice word right there, because we all measure respect differently. Someone steps on my shoes when I'm in Vegas at the club, whatever, got more shoes, and it ain't that serious. Someone else in my group gets their shoes stepped on, it's about to ignite into fireworks. And I don't have an objective answer to what respect means, but I will tell you what I've learned to experience what respect is defined as. It's something that you perceive in your head how someone else perceives you. Do they respect you? Now, that question is answered in so many different ways for so many different people. You think something is disrespectful, and then I won't think the same thing is disrespectful. So we have to get to some objective measure of respect. And if you're in a business relationship, the primary way to show respect is compensation. What's the love language of sports? How much you paying for me, bro? Like, you could treat me like trash, and if I'm the highest paid player, you're not really treating me like trash. However, if I'm the lowest paid player, but you say every day, attaboy, oh, I love you, Marcellus. Yeah.
That's real. That's real.
I don't know if you really respect me. So sometimes you just got to get out your own way. I don't know if Draymond understands this, but you don't know what you don't know. And losing perspective with the real world and losing perspective of how they're really treating you. Draymond, they call him Mr. Triple Single. But he ain't making triple single in money. He making triple double dollars, right? And I'm just letting these guys know, man, I know I come out as with a minority viewpoint, with something that people don't really want to understand. But I just got to say this last point. I read a book. You remember the book, respected writer, $40 Million Slaves? You ever read that book or heard about that book? Man, that book took me a lot of places. And I love that. I don't need you to affirm what I'm believing. I need you to inform me on some things I don't know. But one of the things that was a little dangerous in my response to that book was the fact that I started to look at sports as a plantation. And a lot of people want to go there. And I know underlining this conversation, a lot of people want to talk about it like that too, but they just ain't ready. And I remember reading that book and finding the finer points and saying, this is an amazing book. But also, $40 million slaves? And the equation to sports? Now, did I ever see a slave dream of becoming a slave? Because I know I dreamt of being a professional athlete. Did you dream of becoming a professional athlete?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Was it ever deemed in society with esteem that slavery was a preferred way of life? But athletes and athletics is a preferred way of life. Did it ever, slavery provide a life-changing opportunity for generational wealth like it did for me, for you, and thousands of others? Nah, bruh. I just look at the situation where that book took me to a place where this conversation takes me to as well. It's this mindset that is almost plantation-based. Oh, they telling us what to do, and they're not taking care of us. And I'm wondering, Acho, how much of it is linked to that mindset or how much of it is really in the direct moment of the present? Are you really being disrespected, Draymond Green, when you have that platform and that forum to make this much of a conversation and reach off of just the way you feel? Is that really disrespect?
Let's park here. And we're going somewhere, America. I don't know if y'all ready, so buckle up your seatbelts. Is it incredibly hyperbolic to compare pro sports to slavery? Absolutely.
Okay.
It's one of the most hyperbolic comparisons you can ever.
You should have told me that before I read the book.
Like, is it incredibly hyperbolic? Absolutely.
Okay.
But are there some parallels?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that is where, even when you dive into this conversation with Draymond Green, are there parallels between 3 NFL owners who are worth more than $8 billion? $8 billion. Average NFL owner has billions to his name. The NFL salary, roughly on, like, you're talking about the averages, the introductory players, they're making $800,000 to $8 billion. So again, you see the average person, if you're not in pro sports, you're like, these guys are making millions, these guys are making hundreds of thousands, I don't want to hear about it. But remember, you're talking about what is someone working for, and then what is the person who they are working for netting. Because think about this, for y'all at home who don't know, you go to a playoff game, Marcellus, Wiley, and the first playoff game, checks, everybody make the same amount of money. I don't know if y'all know this at home. So if the highest paid player, his annual game check is $1 million, come to playoffs, everybody only makes about $32,000 for that first check.
Facts.
But those ticket prices aren't the same.
Say it, facts.
So the owner is hitting a lick come to playoffs, but the players are taking severe pay cuts. Even if you win a Super Bowl, you only get maybe $120,000. I say only because there are some players whose game checks are $1 million. So again, come the Super Bowl, you're getting a pay cut, several players are, but the owner is getting a pay raise. Hyperbolic to make that comparison between slavery and pro sports. Incredibly hyperbolic, and to a degree it's asinine. But you would be ignorant if you overlooked the parallels. And the parallels being players are working and doing this for X amount of minimal dollars, and top-tier ownership is making exponential what the players are working for. I think those are the parallels that people ignore.
Yes. However, if that is reality, then all of us are guilty of that same reality when we are in the position of ownership. Day one of uncomfortable conversations.
Yes, sir.
And you have your staff, whatever it looked like. I'm sure it has grown since day one, correct?
Absolutely.
And
I was the staff.
I'm the staff now. But peep game, dog. When you grow the staff and then they get their salaries, great. But who reaps the most benefits, or at least should?
The creator.
Emmanuel Acho. Like, you can keep giving bumps and bumps, but your bumps is going to be greater than the bumps you're given. So, to me, it's a false equivalence for this same reason. Whether it's race or what I believe in, which is the class. Haves and have-nots, bruh. And it's so funny it gets distorted because we throw race into a class conversation. We throw class into a race conversation.
That's real.
In this situation, dog, it could be white, it could be black, it could be brown. But whatever you want to say, what's common denominator of it all is green. Draymond Green.